Hey YouTubers, welcome back to episode number 43 of Small Engines Questions and Answers for Friday, April 8th, 2011. Even though it's April, we're still getting a bit of snow actually. It's a bit colder than last year. Last year at this time, it was way hotter, all the snow was melted, the weather was much better, but hopefully it's going to come soon. Before I start today, I want to thank all the new YouTubers for subscribing to my channel. I also want to thank those who regularly watch my videos and also to those who comment. Also, you're going to see the odd video with lower quality come up once in a while because I had a pile of videos in my collection that I had to edit, which I had filmed with my old camera, so that's why you're going to see videos with lower quality. But everything that I'm currently filming is filmed in high definition. The first question today is a YouTuber has a snowblower and he replaced the auger cable and the belts, and he notices when the auger lever is released that the belts still want to turn. He's not too familiar with that because he's never had a snowblower before, but I have a snowblower here with the belt cover off. I'm going to show you why that could be happening. Here's a Mastercraft snowblower made by MTD, and the belt cover is off. Now your blower may not look exactly like this one, but it's going to be the same principle. Now when you have the auger lever released like this and the belts still want to turn, what could be causing that is that the cable is a bit too tight. Now in this case the cable's over here. You need it to be slightly loose like this when it's released. If it's too tight, what happens is that it puts pressure on the idler belt pulleys down here. And what the idler pulley here does when the cable's too tight is it puts a bit of pressure like that. And then when your motor's running with the lever released, the belts still want to turn. So what you want to do is when you replace your cable is make sure that it's not too tight. What could have happened is that the cable might be slightly tighter than it should be when the YouTuber replaced it. A good way to know if you have the cable adjusted properly is that the augers will not turn when you have the auger lever released. If you have the auger lever released like this and the augers still want to turn, then definitely the cable is too tight. Another thing you need to make sure of is that you've installed the correct belts for your snowblower. If the belts are too tight, they're going to want to turn even when the auger lever is released. Another question I often get is why don't I have more videos of rebuilding engines? For example, rebuilding the piston, rings, cylinders, valves, etc. Well, the answer for that is that most times people don't want to spend the money to rebuild an engine. They'd rather just go buy another piece of equipment with an engine on that's running for not much more money. And that's usually because the parts are too expensive. So for example, if you had a Husqvarna 55 chainsaw and you blew the whole top end, piston, cylinder, and ring, if you went to Husqvarna to buy the part, here in Canada, it could be upwards to $300 plus tax, which would end up being around $350 in some cases for an OEM part. So a lot of people will say, well, I'll just go buy another chainsaw for around the same price or $50 more and take my chances. In this case here, if you pay somebody to do it and the parts are expensive, it's not worth it. But if you can find a Chinese top-end kit for around $100, then it's worth repairing. Some people don't want to take the chance with Chinese parts, but some people do. As you will see in a video in the near future, I've rebuilt this Husqvarna 55 chainsaw with a Chinese kit because it was worth it at that price, and we're going to see how good it is. Another example is if you have a small Tecumseh motor like this on an old Toro like that and you've blown the whole top end again, piston, cylinder, and rings. In this case, a lot of people will say it's not worth it. I'll just find a used blower like that for a couple $100 instead of spending more money to rebuild the engine. So most of the time it ends up being not economically feasible to rebuild a motor, but if you have a good piece of equipment like a brand new snowblower, the body's good and everything, and your motor's shot, in that case usually it's worth repairing. Even in my situation, if I acquire a motor for free even and it's blown, sometimes it's not even worth it for me to rebuild it. And with all the Chinese parts and motors that have come out lately, more people are inclined to go that route. And you can buy snowblowers much cheaper than you did 10-20 years ago. So a lot of people are calculating, is it really worth rebuilding my motor or not? And usually they'd rather just scrap it or get $50 to $100 for it and put that money toward a new piece of equipment. Oftentimes, if you rebuild a motor for somebody else or for yourself, it's usually because that piece of equipment is sentimental. For example, you may have an old chainsaw that used to belong to your grandfather or a snowblower that belonged to a family member that's passed away, and usually people want to hang on to that stuff, so they want to keep it original. So if it had a Tecumseh motor, they want to rebuild that Tecumseh motor, not put on a Chinese motor onto that piece of equipment. So that's why I don't have a whole lot of videos rebuilding engines, but I am going to make some videos just to show you guys how it's done. I've acquired a few engines that are part of my collection that I'm going to use as educational purposes in making videos. But it takes a bit of planning to do that. If you have an old Tecumseh motor, sometimes you have to hunt down the parts. It could be difficult, but usually you're able to find all the parts. So hopefully throughout the year, I'm going to be able to make a video or two of how to rebuild an engine. So that'll be it for this week's episode of Small Engines Questions and Answers. Come back next Friday and have yourselves a great weekend. Take care now.